Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted and privileged to have a conversation with Ike Cha. Ike, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Frits.
The brief introduction, Ike, you are the chairman and CEO of Lionshare.
Yes, yeah.
The longer introduction is I was quite curious in my preparation to see that you studied industrial psychology at the University of Cape Town, then started to work for Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, and in 2005 you set up your own organization, Lionshare, and also set up the One Moment Foundation, which we'll cover. And you also have the foundation, the Ike Cha Foundation itself. So that's a very brief introduction.
Okay.
First of all, that really got me curious. You live in South Africa.
Yes.
That's a given. And why did you study industrial psychology? What is that? And what did it give you?
It's a very interesting. Anyway, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
What's interesting that the backstory is that I actually wanted to be a priest.
Okay.
Initially, yeah. So initially I wanted to be a priest, and maybe as a context, I actually said I had mass with the Pope John Paul II in 1988. That's how Catholic I was. So I wanted to make a difference to people, right? So when I was still about 16, 17 when I thought I was going to be a priest, but sort of 18 months in a monastery. As you hear the balance of my story, entrepreneurs are very fidgety. We always have things in motion. And in the monastery, remember, it's all calm, it's all prayer, it's all gratitude, it's all looking at the world in a different way. So it's when I left the monastery to kind of find myself, because I was still 17, I thought I needed to find myself. And one of the areas which kind of spoke to me was actually psychology as a bridge when I went into university.
Okay. So industrial psychology, you start, I'm assuming because you followed up with an MBA as well. So you started to, I would say, quite a classic career path, working for Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble.
Mm-hmm.
What were your responsibilities in those days?
So the other backstory of how I went into corporate is that I went into the career counseling at university. So they said, no, do a psychometric test and then we'll see where you stand. So when the results came, they didn't give them to me. So they said the head of the whole faculty wanted to see me because my results were almost like an outlier. He says, your characteristics are 110% an entrepreneur. Right. But the problem with people like you is that you go and start a business on your own, but you haven't learned how to run a business. So he almost like begged me, he says, Unilever is coming into town. Why don't you take up that management training program in order to understand, take a journey in corporate, and then after 3 or 4 years, you can start your own business. But that ended up being the career in 2 big multinationals.
Okay, that's very interesting that already the results pointed out which direction you were going to take in life eventually. Now, I was wondering, how did your parents react first going one route, concerning becoming a priest, and then I would say completely going the other way into business entrepreneurship? How did they guide you in that process? Or they say, no, we think we know what you're doing?
So I guess also the background that where I come from. So I almost summarize saying I come from the bottom 1% of the pyramid, right? Yes. So how I basically through entrepreneurship as early age as 13 started hustling on my own. So my parents were first of all disappointed when I didn't become a priest because they were very Christian. They brought me up like that. But when I decided to go to business, I basically was self-funding, so I used to buy and sell second-hand cars to do it. So they were probably saying, you know what, he started hustling when he was 13, whatever he's doing, they were, how do I say? I guess I got lots more prayers to say whatever he's up to, you hope it works out.
Okay, so given that background, I can understand they were disappointed the way you stepped out of the monastery.
Yeah.
Were they disappointed when you stepped out of the, I would say, the protected life, corporate life, and said, "No, I'm going to be an entrepreneur now"?
They were, so if you recall again, coming from the bottom 1%,
Yeah.
by the time I was halfway through the
Yeah.
ladder, right?
Yeah.
They were just amazed. They,
Yeah.
you know. So when I said I'm leaving, my mother, because I now had 2 kids when I left.
Yeah.
No, I had all my kids, all my 4 kids.
Yeah.
She said, "I'm gonna feed my grandchildren." I said, "Yeah, yes, mommy,
Yeah.
I've made a plan. Yes." She said, "If you can feed my grandchildren, go for it."
Okay. Now, just I mean, basically, because you said I come from the bottom 1%,
Yeah.
you're moving up the pyramid, realizing, hey, I'm making a
Yeah.
career, and it's safe to stay there.
Yes.
Then it's risky to say, oh, look, I'm going to do it on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. So so for my parents, it wasn't such a problem. I guess it was more to my wife to say, now, with the lifestyle she now had me working through the corporate ladder and where I was really just about actually picking,
Okay. Now, at the end, you said the university test already proven you were an outlier in your test results, 100%, 110% pure entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Was that the only, you could say, guidance you had becoming that, or were there other people or situations which influence you or confirm you that's the route I have to take?
So so it's 2 elements. So when I did that test, remember I was buying and selling second-hand vehicles. I had 2-3 jobs when I was, I used to drive what I would call an Uber for students. So when they go to parties at night, so I actually, instead of paying my school fees, university fees, I used the fees to buy a little vehicle that I used to run around at night as an Uber for students. Yeah. So in that way already, I mean, even the guy, when he was giving my results, said, "Look at your life today. You're already, you're not a typical student."
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So how to say, the trades already were, I guess, somewhat were clear, right? That the entrepreneurship was already there. Some of it actually driven, we say, in part by survival instinct. Because, entrepreneurs, we have this survival instinct and fear of failure, right? So you're always looking at how do I make things work? Yeah.
Okay. Now, so at certain points, okay, I'm going to start my own company. First of all, it's called Lionshare.
Yes.
Why the name Lionshare? What's behind that name?
Oh, very, very interesting question. So 2 things. One is that the lion is in my totem, in my clan. So my clan, my Charumbira, is actually a clan from the Great Zimbabwe. And the kings and the chiefs were, used a totem, some lion, some hyena, so my totem is lion, right? And when I did my first venture as I was living corporate, which was buying properties in downtown Johannesburg. I mean, I was probably so aggressive in building it. One of my partners said, "Oh, you're going for the lion's share, the lion's share of downtown in the property market." And those 2 words kind of just, had a nice rhyme to them, and the name kind of stuck.
Yeah.
So I just renamed the chef company that I bought and renamed it and rebranded Lionshare.
Okay. Now, and how big, how many people do you employ now with Lionshare?
Okay. So Lionshare is kind of evolved now from what I call, I started with family and friends money, then I used banks money. Then in the last 5-6 years, I basically went into evolve into partnerships. So the collective partnership, the companies that I invest in, we have about 5,700 old employees. Yeah.
Okay. Now, can you still remember the very first employee you signed up?
Yes. Yeah. So the first employee, so entrepreneurs are also very good in projecting life, right? So in 2003, actually, when I started buying properties, because let's say I'm a contrarian in the way I invest. I always look at things when everybody is rushing out. I'm saying, but why?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So I actually, my first employee was my cousin. He was really young. I actually sent him to school, what we call black tax.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I paid for his school, and he looked, his characteristics were great, and he was the kind of guy, you sit down with him and say, "I'm planning to do this. Can you go and do X, Y?" So you won't do X, Y, you'll do X, Y, and Z. right? So his characteristics were such that I was able to use the framework I had. Mm-hmm. Because in corporate, remember, you always do, when you do a plan, you say, where are we? What is the end game? So I'm going to property. What are we building? I say, oh no, I think we're going to do 500 units. Someone say 500. So yeah, we'll do 500 units, right? So you almost start that way. So this guy was the kind of guy and say, okay, we're buying 500 units, but here's the first block of flats that we're taking. So you are now going to help in the refurbishment and he almost became my what do you call it? My right-hand man, my number two. Yes.
And is he still around?
Oh, I've got a very successful story with him until end of last year, where he, when you are successful with someone and somebody thinks he's, when you are the two of you, there's you and him. So he reckons now he's kind of had enough. He can do it on his own. So he decided to take a different path in December. Yeah.
Okay. Well, having would you qualify? How would you then qualify the person? Is he more a partner or is it more an employee? How did your relationship develop over the years?
So it was he was an employee until about 7 years ago, and he wanted to go on his own. I actually even gave him a equity of a property. I gave him a block of flat that because we had built such a successful business. He went on his own, and listen to this. 2 years later, he came back and said, no, it's not working.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was better. He was always a better number two and not a number one.
Okay. No, it's good to be aware of what your you could say your strengths are, and where I'm going to be the best at. Mm-hmm. Now, also, I was wondering, you just mentioned successful companies. What's your definition of success in this case?
Of a successful company.
Yeah.
So a successful company for me is almost like when you got it to the gate, to the gate of the company, and you speak to a security guard, and you ask about the CEO.
Yeah.
Right. He knows the CEO and he greeted him this morning. To me, that's already a measure of success. To say a company up to his the smallest, not smaller, the lowest denominator, the one person. Many companies don't notice a security guard until there's a theft. Right. Yeah. It's those people that are, so to me, a successful company is when the ecosystem, the stakeholders, not only the people on top, but right at the bottom, that are actually holding the company up, believe in the company and see it almost as part of them. So to me, that's what I would say. If you ask me like now, I'll give you a name of a security guard. If that security guard doesn't tell you how much he loves working for Lionshare and believes in me, right? Then I have a lot of work to do.
Okay. That so to what extent does this mean there's also a personification of the company? So are you Lionshare, or is Lionshare bigger than you are at the moment?
Lionshare is probably bigger than me, but my identity and Lionshare should be congruent.
Yeah.
So I get your point there. Yeah. So my personal mission statement and that of Lionshare, if I showed you them, their identity, right? Yeah. So the congruence of me, and so how do you say? But the way I'm building Lionshare, which is an interesting question, is that I'm building now where I am is building Lionshare beyond me through this partnership that I have now, to a point where Lionshare shareholders, for example, is the foundation that I was telling you about, right? To say I'm building a company that actually is other people dependent outside of my family. Yeah. So the way we do things is completely, slowly beyond me. Yeah, so Lionshare is on persona in a way.
But so the company's growing beyond your own position, but you do, it looks like it invests quite a lot in putting a particular character mindset in the company.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what, how do I say, going back to what I was saying about the security guard. So the security guard who works for me believes in the company, believes in the persona of the company, believes it's part of the story, right? He is not, he's not just coming to a job. He sees almost like his family. Yeah.
I like that. Now, also what I hope I got my research right, Ike, so please help me on that. But
yes.
also founded the One Movement Foundation.
Yes.
But what I found quite interesting, you set that up in the same year as you started Lionshare. Is that correct?
That's it. Yeah. Well, I formalized it just now, but I've been doing the same work when I started Lionshare.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Most people who do a startup 24/7 is getting the startup running.
Yes. Yeah.
So why did you decide, okay, I'm going to start my own business, and at the same time, I'm going to start a One Movement Foundation? How intertwined are they?
So what is also very, very interesting, we picked up a very interesting point. So if you remember, I come from the bottom 1%. So here I am kind of, let's say successful now, investing in properties in downtown Johannesburg. So if you know most downtowns with poverty and homelessness, right? I bought a building that had like 2-3 blocks, right? There were people sleeping in the streets, right? And then every time you see, then there was scratching in bins. Yeah. So here I am, successful. I bought this building. I just converted it into apartments. I'm letting it, everything. But every morning I come and I can see these people. And the hunger they are facing, I've been through it.
Yeah.
So I said, surely, yeah. So I was speaking to my guys, just put, a hot tub of tea and some bread every morning, right? So as the caretaker, I started with 10, 15. Then before you knew it, now there are 50 people coming, there are 100 people coming. So it almost started by default.
Okay. Realizing you're coming from the bottom 1%, I fully accept and assume this is sincere. But to what extent have you been blamed? Look, the only reason getting those people off the street around the corner is to increase the value of your property. Because if you're going to have homeless people around your property,
yes. The next guy is going
to. So, have you come across those criticism or remarks when you combine business and, say, philanthropy in this case?
Not in this, not in this part of town, because part of town, our need, and because South Africa is also, I mean, the number one most unequal society in the world before Brazil, right? So our problems are obvious. So I'm even what I'm doing now is almost a drop in the ocean. So not really. Not really. It's just that people just thought, as you say, you start a business. People think, how sustainable is it that you're taking the little that you're making and now you already sharing? Yeah. So, but for me, so this is maybe probably more spiritual, right? Yeah. Okay. I actually think I became more successful because I approached my business that way.
And I'm also thinking at the same time of the fact that when you were 17, you started a monastery. So did a little bit of that experience rub off as well, that I have to do good?
Yeah, so it's almost an ethos. So it's almost it's in my DNA anyway. Yeah. Okay. So if anybody needed help and I can feel it in my gut, right? Yeah. It's not very difficult to help.
Yeah, because you've been there. You know what it means.
Yes, and I know eyes of a hungry person.
Yes.
Yeah.
You recognize that.
100%.
Yeah. Now, you've been able to grow Lionshare in a successful business. Are you able to or willing to share us a couple of the big learning points, maybe even failures along the way? Say, look, this is actually what helped me get where I am.
Yes. So I don't know if I'll pick a couple. So the first one was the advice I got in university to go corporate. Was probably the best advice I ever, especially in the environment we are, because some of the frameworks that I use to do my investments, I come from there. To say any investment I make, I might look all juicy, but you first start, the end game, right? So if you invest here, what does this thing look like in 5 years or 10 years? Secondly, right, is it good for everyone, right? Right, and then thirdly is that who are the different you got to start connecting the dots. That's the one. The other one, the element around people, right? I've made a lot of mistakes on partnerships. When I went into the hotel business, for example, invested with a interesting gentleman. He was in the industry for 35 years, but we started investing in hotels in 2010. In 2010, if you remember, at Booking.com, when technology actually is completely disrupted the hospitality industry. So we put but he approached it from he says, Mr. Know-it-all. I've been in the game for 30 years. You guys can tell. I can say, look at the data, right? The data saying the guy next door with an apartment is now our competitor, right? It's not the Hilton and Radisson, right? The guy across the road, with what? His cost structure is different from us. So we need to look at the market. No. So, yeah. So,
but it's also a very, very wise lesson you're giving also to the audience. That is, you can be in the business for 35 years. When at a certain point, you're going to start your gut feeling, but
Yes.
you also look at the data.
Yeah.
So, how do you collect data and how do you use data?
So the two ways I do. I'm a very big fan of YouTube.
Okay.
Like now, I probably consume instead of reading newspapers, right? I pick interesting trends and stories because today I can listen to the best expert in any subject, right? The best number one, right? Sitting in my study. So what I tend to do is then use data and trends that are, it could be a Harvard presentation on energy, right? I'm in the energy space. So there's one professor who's talking about the abundance of energy in the next 15 to 20 years. I'm in the energy business today. So I'm now looking and saying, how do I know the transition point, or either to exit the industry or go to where the puck is going, So that's the one. The other one, I actually did a survey. So I have a WhatsApp group with the smaller companies that I invest in. So I'm more involved in them. So I have a WhatsApp group with 150 people. So I was with my ex-co and saying, so we have a newsletter. Saying, oh, no, how do people feel? I said, no, let's put a. So as I was in the thing, I put a survey up, right? By the time we finished the ESCO, out of the 108 people, about 30% had already responded. So the guys, sometimes you want data, we have all this technology, we should use it to our advantage. So yeah, so I use data, what I call a minute on the go, but for the big type trends that I look for investments, technology and access. Like now, you and me are sitting where? 10,000 kilometers away, but it feels like you're here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, by the way, I'm just also looking at all the books you have behind you. To what extent are books a resource for knowledge, or is that entertainment?
So if you look at the subject, right, there are two.
I can't read them. I just see a lot of books.
Okay, there are two types of books here. One is autobiographies of successful leaders and people, right, in business and in politics. So you will see a lot of Mandela, Clinton, Obama, right? That's the one side. Then the other ones are the classic business books, right? So all the CEOs, GE, etc. That have, because my view is I don't. There's nothing we're reinventing. We're just repackaging life in different ways, either using tools like technology, etc. So I use this. These are my my mentors and guides. So because there are traits, there are traits that you can pick up. Yeah.
Okay, but you also then have to have the ability to recognize them. We have such an abundance of books, YouTube films, TikToks, whatever. So how do you apply a filter that okay, this is something I should be spending time on? Because you have 24 hours a day, and running a business, reading books, watching YouTube films. How do you select? How do you make decision in this case?
So I use the principle of 80-20. So I have the sector, like now I believe in leadership, right? So leadership is important to me. So I pick probably the top 3 to 5 leaders in their value set that resonates with me, both in business and politics. For example, I see myself as a private equity investor. So Steve Schwarzman from Blackstone, right? Big fan of him. Probably have consumed 200 hours of his, even yesterday, wherever he is, I always have alerts on YouTube when they post on him. So that's me learning from him continuously, right?
Okay. Yeah. Now, does it also inspire you to start your own YouTube channel, start to share your knowledge?
So up until our trip to Costa Rica, right, I've always been kind of hesitant because there are too many people who claim to have succeeded, right? And maybe they are 35 and now they're telling everybody they're success. But if you actually dig in and look at the 2-3 layers, it's all fluff. Yeah. So I've always said to my because my kids, did you write a book and something? I've said no until I turned 50. Then I look back and say, no, after 20 years in this game, I've got something to share. So I started writing a life book. So I'm actually halfway through writing a book. And then from there, actually now, if you see my LinkedIn, through LinkedIn, and because I believe LinkedIn for my kind of audience, right? Yeah. So my kind of audience probably maybe not in YouTube, but more in LinkedIn. So I'm looking at how do I share my story with people who are in business and also are looking to have a bigger impact in the world. And those people are probably sitting in, let's say, LinkedIn as a channel.
Yes. No,
Yeah.
it very much is. Now, you've already implicitly gave a lot of great advice to viewers out there. But if you would sum up, hey, for those young managers who want to start out their own journey, what advice would you give them? Where to start, what to watch out for?
Okay. So the what of what business, I would say, is that look at the thing that if it was cold and -5 degrees and it was 2 o'clock in the morning and you needed to go wake up and do that business, that idea is, I'm saying as a start, to where to start. The second one is once you kind of get it and you are 80% think this is the right thing, you've looked at the data and just start. Do the iPhone 1, right? Because in 18 months, you come with iPhone 2, iPhone 3. So don't over plan. And then the third one is that, half of the people are naysayers in your ecosystem. Half of the people, out of 10 people that you listen to, there's probably 5 that will help you out even better than listening to, everyone, including your grandmother. She might love you to bits, but her advice might not be true, right?
Yes, and grandmother's always biased in that sense. I want to touch on a little bit on what you said, don't overplan. If I look at your resume online, it says your advice is to systematically and conceptualizing a clear end goal.
Yes.
And the importance of planning things through. So what's more, so I think you plan the end goal, but not the way to get there?
No, so the end goal, and then put a system to what? To work towards it. So if you ask me today, let's say I slept at 2:30 doing a board pack. But in the board pack is a journey I started 6 years ago with the Scania, the automotive business we have. But the story is the same. The story where we started and where we're going, we wanted to be the biggest independent partner of Scania in 5 years. We've already achieved that. Where are we going next? We want to now to grow the thing to the next. So what am I telling the board is exactly what I told them when I started. But the journey is not straightforward, but it's systematically, right? Yeah. And then the last one was what I learned is the using frameworks, right? Is that, yes, you can take a blank piece of paper but frameworks from, the McKinseys of this world, etc. As the framework, right, makes your thinking, you channel your thinking better. And rather than, it's almost like taking an aeroplane and just saying, I'm going to Europe, I'm just going to take off and fly, right? There's weather, there's storms, but you need to have a compass and something to guide you through
So dream big, get a framework.
Yes.
And so that's almost like the blue side of the business, the hard planning side of the business. At the same time, also, I'm hearing you balance it with a people focus, because the guard at the gate, that's what you're building your company on.
Yeah, those people in the gate, the guard at the gate, are the people holding the company together. And if they don't believe in your dream, right, or what you are trying to build, if you have 1,000 people, it's just interesting.
Yes,
you'll get average results. Yeah.
That good insights. Now, at this moment in your life, Ike, last question. Where are you going to spend your time on the future? Is Lionshare going to take care of itself and it's going to be more on your foundation, or will it always be combined?
How do I say, I'm building Lionshare to fund the foundation, and obviously the 2 parts. I'll fund the foundation and what the impact, because I'm only too grateful to have what I have and if I can share what I have. So I've almost set up a framework where the foundation is funded by the company. That's the one, and will be funded by a company as almost like an endowment, right? So even my kids can't mess this thing up. I've already told them, whatever you have, you must look after Lionshare, the golden goose, so that it looks after these people that we started looking after. So that's the one. And then the other side is that, I probably have got another 5 or 10 years of active. There's lots I could do. So I'm actually putting up a fund, a private equity fund, to invest in particular sectors that I believe have impact, right? From the circular economy, coming back to, 65% of our population in Africa is still under the age of 30. So we have to create employment in some way. So I think I still have some give to build 1 or 2 mega interesting ventures. And then I'll spend more time on the Ike Cha Foundation is taking what I have and aggregate young entrepreneurs who are in the bottom 1%. Because they might have access to some information now because of technology, but don't have access to the networks I have. So I'm taking my networks down to there and hopefully pull 1 or 2 entrepreneurs that could make, move the dial.
Okay. I have room for one more question, because if somebody now approaches you, look, hey, I know you have this foundation. Can I make use of that? What are you looking for? What makes you believe or make a decision? Yes, this is somebody who's doing it right.
You mean in terms of working with the person in the foundation?
Yeah.
So our foundation is very, very simple. Is that we're taking food from, we're rescuing food to give it to the people that need it, and we've building actually a franchise system to get it where it needs to, right? So if that person can help us to get it more, right? And we have limited resources, we're using what we can. So if you come and say, okay, I like what you guys are doing, maybe I'll help you in the system of how to do it even better. It might be actually knowledge, not even resources. Someone might say, okay, what's your plan and how can I plug in? Because maybe our plan is to develop this over 5 years and there's areas we haven't touched yet, and somebody wants to come and plug in and assist. Because this, the game of philanthropy is a team sport. You can't know it all. So yeah.
My observation, Ike, is it comes quite natural for you. Like you give me the impression that you're always going to be on 24/7. Is that a fair assumption, or are you able to relax and say, look, it can run for itself a couple of hours, a couple of days?
Then what am I going to do with myself? Because it's just people like me. This is my life. It's like a calling.
Yeah.
Right? This is my life. This is what I do. This is a hobby. This is fun, right? Talking to you now is, energizes me. I'm already thinking, what am I going to do after this? Because now my energy is high. Yeah. Okay. So for me, I'm saying, if you hit good 60, 70, 80 years, you're going to be down there for another, I don't know how many, right? So the next life is something else. But right now, I have less Christmases than I had prior, right? So every day counts. And if I can make a difference, all the better. Great.
Hey, Ike, I want to thank you so much for sharing your insights, your enthusiasm, your energy. And, well, I really hope that the audience has picked up a number of very valuable lessons you've shared with us. So I want to thank you so much.
Okay. No, thank you for the opportunity to share. And nice to meet you again, Chris.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.